Johnson, and this is focused on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pokonjre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at ethics, the rule of law, and politics. And this is not in a vacuum. This is in the wake of what's going on in the legislature. We see that government officials have signed the performance contract and the code of conduct. And we see that the CSA and the NEC, that's the Civil Service Agency and the Election Commission, they are in a little bit of a tug of war. Dismayed staff from the NEC filed a complaint to the CSA. CSA said, we want to intervene. NEC said, no, you have no business here, so stay out of it. All this, we're going to be discussing, talking about ethics. What's ethical? What's the rule of law? Do we do the rule of law, or is it politics trumping everything? Let me welcome the young and vibrant William Gibson, who's our panelist here on Tough Talking Thursday. Welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Jar. Glad to be here.
Let me also welcome Dr. George William, a social and governance commentator. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
And let me welcome all our viewers from across the globe. We're expecting other panelists to join very shortly. But we want to welcome all of you. Please, or if you have not done so already, please share the show, invite someone, and let's get started. Let me start by saying, in Liberia, when we say ethics, Dr. William, what comes to mind? Or not just Liberia, in Liberia, but even in the diaspora, when we talk of ethics, is it something that we grab on, or is it something that is what do you say? What do you think ethics is when it comes to Liberia? How do we look at it?
Dennis, ethics is a collection of many considerations. Ethics border on accountability, integrity, responsiveness, respect, impartiality, leadership. It's a combination of many factors to be considered. And so ethics generally in public service, it's about administering or serving the public in ways that generate trust in one's service to their community and their nation. Trust from those we serve, and, you know, in terms of not just the service, but also in moving the country forward. How you conduct oneself, how one wants to be seen in the eyes of the public. And so it's a combination of many factors. There's not one pillar around which one can be construed or examined as ethical. So ethics is a broad spectrum of factors in terms of public service.
Knowledge in Liberia, is this something that we talk about in our society, in our environment, in our workplace, in our churches?
Unfortunately, it has become very blurry because over the years, and I go back over the last 30 years, 30, 40 years, um, ethics in government, especially in public service, the definition of ethics has eroded. Uh, Fast forward to today, I'm not even sure if people actually know what ethics is all about anymore. We see so much going on. We see, for example, the way people dress to go to work in the first branch of government. Forget the other branches, just focus on the first branch. The way they conduct themselves, the things they say, how they do it. Ethics, again, it's not just how you put your suit on. It's how you say good morning to the public. It's how you conduct yourself in public and private uh, situations. It's how you custode the responsibilities given to you. You know, so it's a broad range of issues, and I think we've lost any sense of what the definition of ethics is in public service at this
Thank you.
point.
Mr. Gibson, what may be legal or what may not be illegal may not be ethical, right? Is that something that we are aware about? Do we even care when it comes to our Liberian, the country, the society, and everywhere?
Example, the
Let's say
way
looking at ethics and the rule of law, and somewhere, or we just say, as long as it's legal, let me do it.
Yeah, when it comes to the overall definition of ethics, you talk about a set of moral codes and that someone as an individual holds, right? I think in the case of Liberia, we've seen the time without numbers when it comes to a lot of these corruption scandals and um, certain cases that are ruled upon that we deem to be um, just a little hazy when it comes to how people rule because there's some influence that's applied. We see that overall ethics is something that's thrown out the window. A lot of people within public office believe that they're better or that they hold more power than another individual. So they use their powers for their own benefit. So we don't really see ethics being held in high esteem because from the top of leadership to the very bottom, it's not something that is practiced in any kind of way.
Let me welcome also Jimmy. So Jimmy, we see ethics on one end, we see the rule of law, and then, and then come in politics. If you were doing a Venn diagram, I mean I remember my math skills now. So ethics, politics, rule of law. How did
Where
we? How did
where it
we mix it?
overlaps? You
Yeah,
talking about where it overlaps?
yeah.
Well, let's say ethics is not about
And,
following.
and whether they even overlap at all in our country.
Good question. Ethics is not about following strict rules, but rather understanding and reflecting on values and consequences of actions so you can make thoughtful decisions. It's about deciding what is right or wrong as how a society looks at it. You know, it guides people between honesty, integrity, and compassion. You know, it's a guidance. And in every discipline they have its own ethics. So it's not just about rules, but what is the better way to behave in a certain position, in a certain situation. Just like Dr. Williams was saying, is it there's no rule against wearing short trousers to the courthouse, but you don't want to do that because of some ethics. even though I did that once. I wore short pants, and the lawyers there, CFOs were there, a couple of my lawyers were there, and I said, I didn't come to court. I came to meet you at the restaurant. But yeah, so it's all about what is the right thing to do in various situations that will be suitable, that will maintain integrity and honesty and fairness in these situations.
So when it comes to how we conduct ourselves in Liberia, how we do business, especially in the public service, we look at the ethics, the ethical part, we look at the rule of law, and we look at politics, right?
Yeah.
I want you to end there. Where do we lean most on the public sector side?
Well, in the public sector side is very important because it affects our interaction. For instance, if you go to get a passport from the passport bureau, they will ask you some questions, and you will wait in line until your turn comes. But if you have an unethical passport director who will issue passports without going through the proper rigors or granting people favors, then it becomes unethical. So he may not necessarily be breaking the law, but what he is doing is.
So my question is, what does that person consider foremost in their decision making? Is it the politics? Is it the law? Or is it ethics, or a combination of all three?
I think there would be a combination of all three. We all
Has to be, yeah.
We can't get away from politics, okay? But I wouldn't like to look at things that way. I would think the law must be adhered to. But sometimes some things, the law doesn't address certain things, and that's when your ethics kicks in.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now that brings us, we set the stage here. Now that brings us to some of the things that we'll be talking today, starting with the impasse or the speaker issue in the House. If you look at that whole thing, it started with people saying, well, Funati did this, and they were talking about ethics. They were talking about things that he broke the law, he did this, he did that, right? And he went into allegation of bribery and all that. Now you have this group coming, Supreme Court. So you see the interplay of everything in there. Dr. Williams, so let's look at this case now, and a lot of things have happened, but let's look at it, from that perspective. Are people going after ethics? They said now Supreme Court says something, well, this is what Supreme Court is saying. That's legal. And people say, oh, no, don't talk about this. What is going on in there is just political.
So, Dennis, first, let me start by saying, it's unfortunate, but I'll still say this, that I'm happy we are at this impasse, because as an educator, every moment, every situation we're confronted with is a teachable moment. And every such situations ought to be an opportunity for reforms. And so I see this current situation in the House as a situation that's necessitating what I would regard as the purge for the better. So we're having this situation, and of course, the hope and trust is that coming out of this situation, that both the Senate and the House will strengthen its internal laws to ensure that before a speaker or the pro temp is removed from office, a laid out set of guidelines are met. Even though we have some there, seemingly it isn't strong enough. So we've had to go to the Supreme Court, and like you said, we're given a conflicting interpretation of what the Supreme Court has just said. Goes back to what is ethics. Ethics is seeing the precepts of the law and interpreting it based not on the clientele perspective, but from what you know the intent and soul of the law is. And so it's regrettable that we have a situation where the Supreme Court decision, however ambiguous it might have come out to be, there is a soul and intent behind what the Supreme Court has said. And many lawyers that I've listened to so far have come up with, some have a lot of respect for. Some of those lawyers, I don't really care about. But Councillor Gonglo, for example, took hold of what the Supreme Court has said and had a perspective about it. The Minister of Justice, in his own thinking, had a different perspective. Now, we go back to say, where those interpretations, whether it's the Gonglo or the Oswald Twel's interpretation, were they ethical in their interpretation of the law? It remains to be seen if the Supreme Court, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to preempt or attempt to do the work of the Supreme Court, but it will be upon the Supreme Court now to come back and inform us clearly on what their intent and reasoning was behind the statements or declarations that they made. But, it goes back to the whole issue of integrity when we talk ethics. People take advantage of the law based on the looseness of the law. They can interpret it in whatever way they can to suit the interests of their clients. And I think we're experiencing this right now. And so we're learning not just at the level of the legislature, we're also learning at the level of the Supreme Court. Because when you leave a ruling kind of open, it's left to interpretation, and you don't want Supreme Court decisions being left to interpretation. And I'm sure the Supreme Court is going to learn from this experience as well. And I'll give my colleagues some chance. Yeah.
Talking about the Supreme Court, and I put the link in there, the Supreme Court that is entitled The Unconstitutionality of Several Actions Taken by Certain Members of the House of Representatives, and the link is right here. I also put that in the comment section so you can go and read for yourself. So without trying to make you push you so that Supreme Court hold you in contempt, but you think the Supreme Court is ethical, is acting based on the rule of law, or is playing politics as well?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
I don't want you to read.
I generally believe in the men and women on the Supreme Court. I think they're aware of the implications and ramifications of every decision emanating from the Supreme Court. And so as a law-abiding citizen, I presume that all decisions emanating from the Supreme Court is within the gambit of the law, is with all good intents for the advancement of our society. And so in this particular case, I wouldn't necessarily deem them to be playing politics. I think the Supreme Court is faced with a situation they haven't necessarily been faced with at the level that is at, with Fonati Kofa refusing to resign. I think they've been tested. In other cases, the speakers have resigned, making the job easier on the burden, easier on the Supreme Court. In this instant case, they have to meet the details of the law. And so they're confronted with this reality. I've just been informed that the Supreme Court, Fonati Kofa, has just filed a bill of information to the Supreme Court. And so that places the Supreme Court in a confinement. They have to come up with the specifics. They cannot hide behind the generality of the law. They have to be more specific. And so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
All right, let me go to William, but first let me welcome our governance advisor, Mr. Atman Sharif. Welcome, Mr. Sharif.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Let me also mention that in Bowman County, at one point, Salif took his mom to the clinic, and the mom put him in line and said, "Wait here, don't move." So Salif was in the line, Mr. Ahmed was in the line, and then the office, because they went early, right? So they were in the line. So the office opened, and then the people started moving.
It was at the hospital, man, the outpatient.
But Mr. Ahmed got a strict instruction, said, "Don't move." So when everybody was moving, he stood his ground. So the people came and said, "Pikin, let's go." He said, "No, my mom said I shouldn't move." Was it ethical? Was it political, or the rule of law? Don't answer that. Let me go to William. I think we're playing politics, right? Or rule of law. But William, so let's look at politics, ethics, and the rule of law in this whole thing, coming from everything we've said so far about the actions all of them are taking.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what the court did in terms of their ruling, you saw both sides celebrating. So it wasn't a clear-cut, ruling in terms of painting for the public, those who didn't have any legal knowledge on who was the true victor in this case, or if it was not anyone, for that matter. So I think with the way they did it, it didn't really provide any clarity for anyone who is looking for an end to this situation where there's an impasse between these legislatures.
Maybe it was clear they were just being dishonest, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if they're going to push dishonesty, which of course you expect nothing less from politicians who are not ethical. So in that matter, I would say it would have been a bit more important for them to have a clear, pretty much something written out to communicate to the public, to the laymen who may not have understood what is taking place. I think it would have been a bit more beneficial for them to go ahead and put that out, especially at a time where there's so many things that needs to be moved ahead in terms of the overall working of the legislature. It's nothing it's at a stalemate right now. So you have a lot of people coming out with different rulings, but the Supreme Court has not come out and said what is fact in this situation.
Let me read the last line in the Supreme Court ruling, and I post the link there for people to go and read for themselves. If something long, so we start with the wherefore. So when we see wherefore, we know something is happening. Say wherefore, and in view of the foregoing, any sittings or actions by members of the legislature not in conformity with the intent of Article 33 and 49 of the Constitution are ultra vires, meaning outside the law. Hence, members of the House of Representatives are to conduct themselves accordingly. The clerk of this court is hereby ordered to inform the parties, and it is hereby so ordered. Mr. Salif, you understand that?
Yeah, I understand that. You have to put the court's decision in context. From the beginning of this saga, I said that this is a political question. They have this thing, so-called political question doctrine, whereby any matter that does not lend itself to judicial review. I have to hear myself. I don't know if it's mine. So that essentially, it's not a matter that you go to court and you have the Supreme Court compel 49 other colleagues, legislators, your peers, to come back and sit under your gavel. If essentially it's a vote of no confidence, right? In the beginning on their show, you will recall, initially I said, look, Councilor Kofa is the speaker, and they need to resolve this matter, but this is a political question matter. This is not necessarily a legal question matter. So he keeps going to court and says that the law is on his side, and he's for rule of law. But many have argued that he has not always been for the rule of law. So you cannot be selective in implementing the rule of law or abiding by the rule of law and respecting the rule of law. Okay, so that's the context I want to set. Yes, I mean the court can interpret the provision of the Constitution. All right, and because that's their job, and you may bring a political question matter to judicial review once this matter borders on constitutional interpretation. They have to interpret what the law is and what the law says, and that's what the court has done here, right? And so all the parties ought to respect that. However, the question still remains: if a legislature, the lower house in this case, majority of its members have essentially voted and passed a no confidence vote in their leader, the speaker. If this speaker is unable to really galvanize and support and bring the majority of his members of the House in agreement, then you can't continue to be speaker. I mean, that's really where the debate is. And it's holding the country hostage. We can continue to say, what does the court say? Why is the justice minister trying to interpret the interpreter? And, and all of that. It's just continuing to hold the country hostage. So earlier on, you're discussing ethics, and I'll end with this. This is an ethical question now in the end. People really have to stop and say, okay, is this hurting the country? Is this for self-interest? Is it a personal aggrandizing pursuit? Or is it in the pursuit of the interest of the country and the Liberian people? If it is the latter, then they ought to do the right thing and move forward. And whoever the majority, and it's a term of art in this context, majority of the legislators can come around to support. Let them support such a person and move the country forward. Then, Dennis.
Are you looking at, like in the case of American Director Ray, because President-elect Trump signaled that he's going to change him, so he said, well, even though there's time on my tenure.
Yeah. When I saw that, I said, okay, listen, we've been having similar situation back home, whereas there are tenured officials, right, who the president, in a way, directly or indirectly, has signaled that he can't work with these people. He will put his own, he rather have his own people there. Own people in a sense, those whom he can work with, because any president has the right to select the people who they can work with easily and move their agenda forward. So if you as an official see that this president really doesn't have confidence in you, or doesn't see your stance, your public statements, your actions consistent with that vision of how this institution will operate, people step down. Look, you resign. That's the ethical thing. I mean, if there's a data breach or some kind of disaster happens, and your portfolio is the one that's responsible to have prevented this, you see officials resign and step down all over the world. That's the ethical thing to do.
Ahmed, if I may cut in for a minute, ethics can play on both sides of that argument you're making. First thing first is that, and we use the Funati case. I'm not a fan of Funati, but let's use his case as the case in point. Funati is pushing, he's aware that he's lost the confidence of his colleagues. He's aware. He's aware that he's not going to maintain the speakership. He is saying, from an ethical lens, he is saying, forget about what he did in the past. That's not the one under the microscope. We're talking about what's happening now. And part of our complication is when
you say ethics and then forget
what I'm saying, focus on what's happening now rather than compounding his entire past. Because if we looked at his entire past, he should not have even been speaker. He should not have been speaker in the first place.
Right.
He shouldn't have even ended up in the legislature in the very first place. But he got there, he became speaker. And so let's focus on where we are. So as to lessen the complication in terms of the analysis.
Dr. Williams, that's what I'm focusing. I'm not going back to any past that anyone may know. The past that I'm looking at is even within the context of the legislature, his effort to become speaker, and since he's been speaker,
we're aware. We're aware, Ahmed. We're aware. In fact, like I said, he should not have even been speaker, given all that they knew, because most of what they're counting now as the issue were things they knew.
Yeah.
Were things they knew. So Fonati can say, hey, even though my past is what it is and my colleagues don't want me anymore, but I'm going to stick in there to ensure that anyone coming after me cannot be removed simply because a majority gather on one hand. When there are laws, there are stipulations on how the speaker ought to be moved.
So Dr. Williams, so what he's saying in essence is the law, it's not ethics. You're saying there were ethics on both sides. But what Fonati is saying...
No, his ethics could be on Fonati's side. If I could argue for that,
the law. Even though you don't want me, but I need 49, because that's the law.
Dennis, listen.
And that's an ethical standpoint.
Ethics,
so how is that ethical?
Ethics is what guides the
integrity of the law. You cannot remove a speaker outside of what the law stipulates. So if he's not going to resign, you need 49.
Right. So that's legal. That's the legal part.
But you can't separate legal and ethics sometimes.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. No, ethics guides the conduct and behavior, right? Something may be perfectly legal, but the way in which you approach that thing and exercise that thing borders on ethical behavior or the lack thereof.
Understood. So when you take the Fonati stance on not resigning and wanting an interpretation, a clear interpretation from the Supreme Court, and you take the stance of the majority bloc to wrestle power away from the constitutional approach, constitutionally laid out approach, who's being more unethical?
Well, listen, if you carefully read the Supreme Court's decision, though, it seems to me there's language in there that suggests that each side is selectively interpreting the constitutional provision to their liking, or to suit the nuance in a way that suits their situation, and that's where the court
not
came
the
in.
Argument that I got out of it.
That's where the court.
I want to bring in Jimmy, so let him finish, Mr. Salif.
Yeah, well, listen, you can read a text and you see different arguments, you see different conclusions and results. It just depends how you look at it. Like I said, the way they set up the decision before they got to it suggested that, well, this side has looked at narrowly or looked this way of this article and that article, and then before they reached their wherefore that Dennis was reading. That's really what I was saying here. So it just depends on who you're speaking to. Those so-called majority black could say, look, we are respecting the law. We are within the confines of the Constitution, and the Fonati side has been saying that as well. So that's where the court came in to clear, and some are still feeling confused.
Right, and before you come in, the court is clear. They said these actions, they term them unconstitutional. Several actions that they took, they say they are unconstitutional. So I don't know what clarity else is needed if what you are doing is unconstitutional.
So why did the Justice Minister
we'll come to that.
Yeah,
we'll come to that. Let Jimmy come in with his side. Jimmy, go ahead, Jimmy.
What the court pointed out, that there's some inherent lapse or gaps in the law regarding this matter. For instance, they said there is no mechanism of how the minority can compel attendance of absentee members. There's no mechanisms. So if you have how can we force it? So and also on the other side of that,
but there was also, Jimmy, no unconstitutional action within that gap. It just said there was an absence, procedural or legal absence of a way to get.
Here's the thing: the speaker or former speaker, however you want to term him, brought the case before the Supreme Court, stating that he was illegally removed from
Right.
speakership, right? And that's what they're trying to address. Okay, the criteria they had to meet to remove him was a vote of 49,
49.
2/3 majority, and they had not met that. But here's why the court had to delicately respond to this, because it's like a gentleman's agreement. Yeah, if we don't want you to be speaker, you just need to leave. The majority say you may not be, you should need to leave. You should bow out. It's kind of like amongst ourselves. This is what you saying now. I will not bow out because you have not reached the 49. Even though I know the majority of y'all don't want me there. You see, he's making it legalistic, whereas the rules that guide this whole process is an understanding amongst peers that if the majority don't want you there, you leave. But he's making it legalistic, and it wasn't written so that the Supreme Court could judge it on a legalistic reference. They could not.
Yeah.
And also, what makes it even worse is that when you look at the fact that this man was elected in January, 5 months later, the man he defeated gets together with his supporters and say they're not sitting on his gavel. Now, to me, that smacks in the middle of ethics. It may be politics, but it's not ethical. So, in other words, is that what we can do now? If somebody's elected and we don't want them there, we can just simply form a group and not sit under it. I think we're setting a bad precedent, you know. But the court can't rule against it because they only can look at the guiding principles of the House. That's all they have to go by. But there are a whole lot of ethical issues with that. And then the last thing I will land is there have been accusations of impropriety, bribing, people taking there's a room in Boulevard that they go to. All these things have been swept under the rug. These things had to be investigated, and for the very fact, let's put all joke aside. For the very fact that we're not investigating none of these things, that's just horseplay over there. They're not serious. None of that thing is serious, because if they were ethical, if they wanted to apply law, these things would be investigated. But that's not what they're doing. It doesn't matter to them. So it's all hoopla with and politics, but it's to the chagrin of the Liberian people, because we're not getting ethical and legal people in the position. Whereas if somebody does wrong, they will be singled out. We are allowing criminals to continue with their actions. Nothing, no consequence against it. So we lose. We're the one who lost that case.
Mr. Gibson, Jimmy is saying this whole thing, I mean, is not ethical. Nobody's investigating the bribery scandal. These things that they are accusing Funati of, they knew already. You know, we are hearing that money changing hands. Also, you don't see what's at stake here, because if you think that it's Unity Party, then why you have CDC also supporting it? And all kinds of things. You agree with Jimmy that this is just people being unethical? It's nothing about politics or rule of law?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, everything that they've done, it's all been within their own interests. It's nothing been on the line of holding up a moral code. A moral code is not respected at this moment. Everybody is trying to protect their own interests. That's why you see money exchanging hands. That's why you see all of these things occurring with this matter, where people are picking sides because it's benefiting them, because brown envelopes are involved. That's just the reality. It's not anything about ethics being at play right now. It's all about how can I benefit from it? what is in it for me. That's the ultimate thing.
So why are we falling for it? Why the population, the citizens, why are we, people are really taking sides?
I mean, the overall, when you have the propaganda and everything that's taking place, you're forced to kind of choose a side because it's the talk of the town right now, instead of the matters that actually should be, being talked about. They're talking about this. Of all the things to talk about, they're picking sides instead of holding these individuals accountable, because they're the ones that's stalling the overall developmental conversations that need to occur. That needs to be passed. When we talk about all the things that should matter to the country as a whole, it's not being prioritized, but instead this is having people choose sides when they don't even have certain things to thrive in life when it comes to having a job and things like that. But they're talking about picking sides in a fight that does not even matter in terms of if they win or not. It's all about the people who are in power winning, and it's not about the little people.
Yeah. Mr. Salif, I don't know about the past 2 days, if you watched what was going on at the Capitol. Fight, bloodshed, Prophet Key style cursing, and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are we going through this as a people? And we think, and really who becomes speaker or not does not matter, shouldn't matter to any one of us, because even when you go to the ruling party and the opposition parties, I mean, why should this speaker issue matter? Because Kofa is not being removed as a representative from Grand Judah. I mean, not Grand Crew.
Mm-hmm.
We see, and there was even fire. People threatened that somebody's going to die at that place. When President Bouaka was asked about what's going on there, let me see if I can see what he went to share. He said, I don't think they should worry about the situation back home. It is a normal legislative process. It is not the first time this issue has occurred. We are capable of handling it, capable of our country continuing to move in the right direction. He plays it down.
Well, yes. Look, in essence, this is political theatrics. In essence, this is a normal exercise of politics. In anywhere, in terms of the talk of war, what's happening? You don't have 49. You can't move me. You can't be speaker. We don't want you. That aspect of it, right? So the president is right there. Here in the U.S., when they were ready, they didn't. Kevin McCarthy, they didn't want him. He moved. We're seeing in the legislature in Kenya, in Parliament, fisticuff. In Ghana, fisticuff fight. People throwing chairs at one another. What was the other Middle Eastern country? So we can give examples all over the place. It's a maturation of democracy in a sense. People are testing different ways to see how institutions work. Only to me, though, if you are doing so within the confine of proper institutionalism, like inclusive, we'll talk about inclusive institutions and things like that. In our case, unfortunately, it's not really about institutionalism. In part, what you saw a couple of days ago, this that you're describing, Dennis, that's a desecration of the people's house. And it's really bordering on it. To me, it's degenerating eventually into the base of physical violence and something that could get out of control. We don't want that. You don't want fire. If fire was intentional, you don't want that kind of thing. You don't want bloodshed. You don't want people threatening people and somebody threatening another person's life. What you should try is tolerate and see if your system can tolerate is this back and forth. Go to court, use the institutions that we have, engage in negotiations, see if your side can win the other side. Look, we have traditional institutions. Our legislature is a traditional legislature. Most people don't know that, actually. For example, there's no requirement that you have to have a degree to be a representative. There's nowhere, there's no such because it's a traditional legislature. Okay. And so when you see people ignoring traditional institutions that could help resolve this problem, maybe traditional council, the Council of Churches, the Muslim Council of Liberia, those kinds of institutions have always been our fallback for reconciliation, for negotiation, and things like that. Elders, the president is an elder in this sense. They're not utilizing any of that. What I'm saying is vitriol, violence, and threats of violence, and that's what scares me.
But let me add something, Dennis, real quick. Let's go down to the nitty gritty. You know what this fight is about? The Speaker of the House controls the strings of the purse. Those people he appoints to this very committee, they're the ones going to control the funds. This is all about controlling the funds from that budget. That's why they're fighting vehemently like that. Because they know whoever gets in charge of that speaker, they will control the budget. Now, it could be that the UP party wants one of them people in there so they can control it the way they want it to go. They don't want to have to go through Kofa. They don't want to have to deal with him. They didn't want to have to deal with him from the very jump. That's why they gathered against him. He still defeated them. But they're so adamant that they want to take control of the budget. They want to take control of the purse, that they started this other movement to get rid of him anyhow and elect the same man with a white ballot. In other words, uncontested. This is a show, to me, this is a show of brinksmanship where we must get control of the budget and the money, and we'll do it by all means we can. That's what we're looking at. All those legalistic things with nice Supreme Court, all ethical, nah. This is all about controlling the money from that budget. Nothing else.
Dr. Williams, should the president use his bullet pulpit to say something, or he should openly send his vice president to the Capitol to talk to the people? We've seen this several times where the vice president will go there and talk. Why are we not really seeing anything openly, the president openly saying something about this? Dr. Williams, you can unmute, please.
Jimmy kind of hit the nail on the head. When this process started, it wasn't clear who was at the bottom of it. It seemed like the more we studied the situation, the more vivid the executive's role in this process become clearer to us. It now seemed like it wasn't an accident when the president asked the speaker to accompany him to Rome. It was part of the plot. The president will come back. The president is an old head. At 80, he's a traditional. I'm going to talk about traditional leadership. What the old man normally would do when two kids are fighting in the town is to bring them together. The president failed to do that because a plot had been hatched, apparently sponsored by his office. The names that cropped up in the process, the Mo Ali and everybody else, pointed to the vice president. You know, Dennis, you're talking about sending the vice president. You can't send the vice president because the vice president's name has already popped up as complicit in this plot. And so their level of neutrality and their abilities to engage the parties has eroded. In the last 2-3 days, the Senate could have been very pivotal in the process. They too made a decision to recognize a party to the conflict, and they too lost out on the abilities to bring the parties together. Now, so that became difficult. The president's silence over the period of time since this thing started have given rise to more suspicion than anything else. And so
that's silence, ethical, political, legal.
I think it didn't border on ethics necessarily. It was a lack of leadership, I would say. It was a pure lack of leadership. Because whether or not the president knew what was happening, he could have stepped in and engineered a tailor-made solution as early as possible. We're in the second month of this crisis. It's like, the U.S. role in the whole Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You supply arms to one group and then you say, "Y'all come to the table, let's talk." The aggrieved party is like, what are we supposed to be saying? And so this is exactly the situation. The executive actually exposed itself. When functionaries of the executive made themselves available to the majority bloc, that defaced the executive's role in the process. It gave away the executive's neutrality in the process. And to be withdrawing security from the speaker now and taking away amenities, it clearly shows that the executive has lost her understanding of her role in this process. And I don't think they can be an effective vehicle to managing an already ugly situation. I think the Supreme Court comes out, provides some clarity on what their declaration was intended, the soul and intent of their declaration, be specific, and let's move forward. But I don't see how the executive could salvage this situation. Not at this time.
I'll give you a chance, Mr. Gibson, and then Mr. Salif, to talk about this too. But let's bring in the Justice Minister, Oscar Tuwe, who said, hey, in my opinion, this is what the Supreme Court is saying. Let me go to what Councillor Tuwe said. Say, hey, this is what they're saying. According to them, he said, my reading of the court's opinion and the analysis made above dictate what constitutes a valid legal and constitutional plenary of the House of Representatives. I mean, I didn't see that. I saw it being ultra virus, but Councillor Tuwe said, according to the Supreme Court, that plenary is legal, is valid, and all that, right? I'm still talking about the silence of the executive, the president mainly, Mr. Gibson. Is that politics he's playing, or he's working, he's working on he's in support of it, but at the same time trying to tell us something different?
Yeah, I will say he's being the puppeteer, the puppet master. I mean, he's pulling the strings from behind the scenes, having his justice minister put out, his overall understanding of what the ruling was. That was step one. And then also now meeting with the embattled speaker to tell him he's stripping him of his security personnel, that he has. To that extent, is showing that he's pulling everything behind the scenes. He's congratulating the person that was elected, I guess, in some way by the majority bloc. So he's already shown his hand in some way, but he's working in silence, and he's doing it that way behind the scenes. I don't think he's going to speak on this because the writing's already on the wall on who he supports.
Mr. Salif, let's conclude.
Look, listen, the legislature is always the first to say we are separate branches of government. We are the first branch of government. Well, it's to their advantage, right? While we recognize that the presidency is an imperial presidency and an all-powerful presidency in our country, but the legislatures always, whether it's this 54th or previous legislatures, they've always argued that, listen, we are all separate branches of government, and our purview do not interfere. What you do is, you can try to use the influence of the presidency, like you said, the bully pulpit in the background, try to help to bring about cooler heads prevailing and things like that. But you can be obvious. The president can, what do you expect? The president can come and say, look, you sit down, you go there. That would not be his role. Frankly, if we want to go into by constitutional democracy, that would not be his role, right? But again, what you do, you can convene people, you can play the elders, elderly statement thing.
Has he done that?
Oh, well, no, does he have to? I'm saying it's all political, so it's strategic. People are calculating here. Okay, can they resolve it themselves? Let's watch and see. You say you went to Sierra Leone and say, look, this is a normal process. There's nothing happening. It will resolve itself. Let's watch and see. Just because the president himself physically may not be involved or has not spoken for us to see, hear, and see, doesn't mean he perhaps is not intervening. You know, it's the presidency has all kinds of tools and resources. So it could be the president has been really trying to resolve this in a way that he could do without interfering constitutionally. But the parties may not be listening, and so we don't know. Frankly, we don't know. It's a political process. It may be politics that is choosing not to be public about anything.
But
If his
Ahmed,
party member, it will benefit. But do you think it benefits the president for Richard Coon to be speaker?
No, I wouldn't say that. Look, what benefits the president is to have a functional legislature, a speaker with whom the president can work to move his legislative agenda forward. They have just, inaugurated a national development agenda. And that's the president's focus, to make sure that that agenda move forward and the budget and the appropriate legislative actions are taken. If you have a dysfunctional legislature, the lower house, that's the government is taught essentially, because the Senate, while it's a separate body, cannot all independently function properly either. So you see the difficulty here, right? And so any president will want to see a functional legislature, whether it's led by a partisan or an opposition speaker. You want a functional legislature where you can negotiate, where you can try to move the agenda forward.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, you wanted to say something? Now we move on to 30 seconds, Dr. Williams. You wanted to interject.
Yeah, but I lost my train of thought. So let's move on.
Thomas Fowler has been, he's the, we all know the role he played. He's on the other side. He was a deputy to Funati. Now he's saying he was being expelled from the CDC. So that kind of confusing as to really, has the CDC really been in control of CDC members? Because we have some on the other side. People are saying, oh, this was all CDC orchestrated from the former president and all that. Now Fowler has been expelled. And guess what he said he wanted? Due process. The one he couldn't. Jimmy, let's talk about the whole Thomas Fowler thing and the role of the CDC in this whole thing. I mean, people were confused because we thought it was just Unity Party versus CDC in this thing, but with 10 or 11 CDC members on one side of the against the Funati speakership. What does it say about this whole CDC? It said that, in fact, former President Weah is not in control as we thought, or is it or he's also hiding his hand?
That's the other part of this puzzle. It's several moving parts. This is too little, too late. When this thing started, if you can remember back in January, the CDC they rallied together and they backed their man Kofa to be speaker. But Kofa, in his exercise of his duties, started showing an alignment with the UP administration. He started showing, it wasn't, to make it simple, he wasn't showing enough love for the CDCians. He acted as if he was not truly part of them. By doing so, he distanced himself from the loyal CDCian group. He distanced himself. So he was left out in the cold for a while. And then, even though Fowler was backing him, after analyzing that this guy is going to be removed no matter what, he played his cards so he could maintain his position within the House. He played his cards to align things for himself. Then later in the day now, CDC saying, well, he's not acting in accordance with the party. No. If when this thing started, CDC should have been wholeheartedly behind him. Fala had no choice because he saw that Fonati was not getting the support he needed, and he was going to be removed. So he had to protect himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a mistake on CDC part not to fully rally behind the man Fonati. And then Fonati, he should have known where we saw his bread was buttered on. In other words, it's CDC that got you there. So when those people start making, you have to stick out. You have to show yourself as a staunch sedition because that's where your support base is. So he played his cards wrong, and Falas wasn't going to play his cards wrong. He was going to make sure that he maintained his position. And so this expelling from the party, I don't think it will have much gravity on his political future. Because now
you see the ethical behavior politics.
Politics ain't got no ethical behavior. That's the whole part about it. Politics doesn't have any ethical. You talk about Machiavelli, our governance, man, what the ends justify the means. They no ethics there. Whatever they can do to maintain their power and control, that's what they will do. So Fala played his cards right to keep his place, but Fonati he tried to play ball. He should have remembered where his backing was, and the CDC and George Weah are one. That way he should have played to, but he played tried to be a balanced game, and he got removed. It's very important in politics that you consolidate your base because in the end they're the one who will support you.
And Adme has educated and understood as we look at Fonati Kofa to be. So what happened to him is what happened to two speakers before him. When he got there, the house rule was there, written in a very vague way. Why didn't Fonati work on all these things?
And he's a lawyer. The two before him weren't lawyers.
You didn't see it coming.
No, you didn't see it coming. I think he was playing his hand. What Jimmy is describing there, because from what I've been hearing is, whilst Fonati was seemed to have been aligning with Unity Party or even with the president, he wasn't necessarily pushing the president's agenda either. He was playing smart. He was delaying. He was, for instance, I think there's a legislation, the Local Government Act or something like that, that was supposed to go through. And he hasn't really done anything. And Dennis was saying last week or how many shows ago you mentioned after Senator Prince Johnson died, who was it that said, "Oh, we just signed that resolution, but we knew when it came to voting, actual voting, we're not going to pass it, right?" And so that was that kind of game. So he's trying to sort of gravitate to make it look like, look, I've been ingratiating myself towards the president so that this Rachel Cohn thing that started will not, there will be no energy there. At the same time, that was a risky move. His party then misinterpreted that and didn't give him the support, apparently, as Jimmy is describing it here. So you're trying to play smart, and then you get bitten by the hand that you're trying to play there. I think that's what happened. Look, and if I'll go back to what Jimmy was quoting Machiavelli, in The Prince, what did he say? If a leader has a choice to choose between being loved and feared, you don't want to be loved. You rather be feared, right? You rather be feared, and that's what Fala did.
So Fala is political or ethical?
Well, he's political because he realizes that CDC needs him more than he needs CDC, right? He's no longer in Montserrato in the party's stronghold where his fate will be in their hands. He moved to Lofa, where he was the architect of helping CDC amass votes. And so if you threaten him, he's now sitting pretty with the, corruption resources, and obviously, and he's in a different safe district. What does he need from the party? He could be an independent, or he could join another party, or better still, establish his own party.
And
you know,
I'm one of those who I don't like, because when people don't want to think critically, they just go to tribalism. But they're saying, hey, if two of them are from Foya, they're kissy. So
there's
what do
the
you
ethnic, exactly. There's the
right?
ethnic component to it as well.
And they're saying now, hey, look, we told you. Now you have people from Lofa, the Momba Molu, the Koji, the Fala, the Sir Joseph around you now. They left you.
No, we haven't seen that. Look, listen, the evidence doesn't support it. If there was that, we would have seen it during the electioneering period, right? In Lofa, it was the Kweji, it was the Fala who were the strongest.
Now that Bwaka is in power, they are going Bwaka where this thing. And another rumors, which I don't want to even repeat, but let me say for the sake of it, that hey, Fala and Jeremiah Kuhn next week, 2029.
Look, it's all politics. You've hit partially hit the nail on the head, as they say. This is also all about 2029. CDC, President Weah, and its people, or at least the people around him, former President Weah, now comfortable with Kufuor be rising and becoming so powerful. This is an educated, experienced, well-traveled man. He has resources. He's the speaker. He's the number 3 in line. I mean, he has ambition. So there's that element there as well. We don't talk about that as much. They're playing their politics, expelling people, and seem to be supporting him now. Look in a lukewarm way. There's really something there to go after. Now, I don't see this part on this tribal side that you are alluding to, Dennis. I haven't seen it play out. I don't see the evidence for it.
Yeah, we hope so. Gibson, I want you to let's talk about Thomas Fala, and then we move to the next subject. Fala, give it.
Yeah, I mean, as everyone has been saying, he took a political move because at the end of the day, like Mr. Salif alluded to, he's sitting in a position where he has to protect his own interests, and ultimately, he's the kingmaker. You know, at the end of the day, in this situation, all eyes are on him, and he has to make sure that the moves that he makes is protecting his interests. In the president also for 2029. So I think at the end of the day, there is nothing but political play that's taking place. There's no allegiance to a party when you're looking for your own political life to continue post CDC. So he had to do, you know, what he needed to in order to protect his interests.
So we see that Kofa, you know, demonstrated he told you have plenty of sense, but now Fala demonstrated that maybe a little more than Kofa thought. And the crew name for Fonati means wait for your time. So yeah, Fonati. So he probably waiting for another time. In another development, they say in a historic move to promote transparency, accountability, and results-oriented government, President Joseph Newman Boakai today presided over the signing ceremony of and signed along with public officials, you know, the performance management and compliance system, PMCS contracts, and the code of conduct at the palace of the executive branch. I mean, so another code of conduct and performance and something. Mr. Selim, you the governance guy. What is this all about? I thought we had this already.
Well, yes, but what they've added there now of that performance management and conduct is really to tie every portfolio to a budget strings into deliverables and outcomes. So if you say you're head of this ministry, this agency, or you're a senior manager there, you are signing that the resources that have been allocated to you, or you will be accountable. You'll be accountable for the outcome for which those resources were allocated. That's one. Secondly, not only that you'll be accountable, but that you're competent, you're qualified, you have the right temperament, you have the right attitude to show up for the job and do the job and hire the right people, you know, those that are not necessary political appointments to get a job done. If you're not capable or not delivering on those, then at least they have some benchmarking procedure. They have something that they can say, listen, You started from here. You should have been here. You're not here yet. These are the indicators that are supposed to help you to accomplish these outcomes. We don't see them. What's going on? At least you can have a conversation around. But if you send someone to administrate, and all they do is show up and maybe do social media posts and make comments in the media, there's nothing to hold them accountable. They're not producing. You don't know. You can't go and hold them to anything. Although they are institutionally, you would think that these institutions, all of them will have some kind of strategic plan, something to deliver and so on. So I think what the president is doing, that they're going toward what's called a project-based budgeting, right? Where you really tie the budget to results and things like that.
Mr. Dr. William, I mean, by virtue of you being a pointer, isn't that, are we over contracting these people, or everybody want to do something new?
No, Dennis. I think we've gotten way too accustomed and comfortable with public officials just being functionaries and not visionaries. I'm afraid that this is just another attempt at rebranding for the purpose of rebranding. I look at some of the appointments in government, I look at some of the institutions, and even after 10 months, there's still not clear-cut targets, objectives that people are seeking to achieve and to be held accountable by. You would think, for example, that coming out of the 6 years and the 12 years of Madam Salif, there are things that need to move on. I know under Madam Salif, for example, we had the institution of the Governance Commission, and the Governance Commission was to take the process of governance to the next level. At some point in Madam Salif's second year, I think since Dr. Sawyer's transition, that whole process just kind of ended. Once Dr. Sawyer was off the radar, that ended. Coming into Honorable Boycott, the trust is that he had some experience with the governance process, and that some of these various things we're talking about now, setting benchmarks, performance goals by which certain officers. For example, my background, yes, it's education, but before leaving Liberia, I was in sports, I was into governance, elections, and those kinds of things. And honestly, we have, for example, besides the Liberia Football Association, there's no other national sports association in the country. Every sports association, there are over 30 of them that are part of the Liberia National Olympics Association. There's barely policy reforms that have taken place, none. These organizations or associations that are supposed to be national operate just in Monrovia. Not to even start to talk about the national budget, but in terms of policy, you have the ministry that's supposed to be in charge of policy, handling and running the biggest program of the ministry is the National Sports Meet. We're running counted meet, something we've done for 50 years. That should be transitioned to the National Association that's still being ran by the ministry. And so it's not just the Ministry of Youth and Sports. There are other ministries, for example. Simple things like our ministry should have websites. The Ministry of Labor, the only thing that resembles a website is where they go to register for alien work permits. Nothing else about the ministry, just alien work permits. And so there are basic things that can be instituted to ensure that government functions properly. We can sign all of the performance management and all of these UN-backed, international community-backed schemes. We can sign all of those. But if we as a people aren't with a vision of where we want to take Liberia, coming from where it has been, we're wasting our time. We need visionaries. We need people who can transform, know the needs of the country, and work to transform it as quickly as possible. We don't have time. We don't have time. The country is degenerating every day. And what's going on at the legislature is just a clear case of how degenerate our society has become. And we need some radical transformation to move things forward.
Thank you.
So these schemes, they look good on paper, but are they going to be effective? I'm not sure. So who's going to monitor it?
Thank you. They say the system represents a fundamental shift in how we govern.
Can't hear you.
Clear. You can hear me?
I hear you now.
Oh, okay. So it was you, right?
Yeah.
We have established clear performance targets for every ministry, agency, and commission, and we will continuously monitor and evaluate our progress. That's President Boakai. So, Jimmy, finally, we have it, right? We're talking about ethics. We're talking about all these things. So, boom, here is it.
Yeah. I like, we talk about it. Old man got all kinds of techniques and tools and mechanisms he used to control the agenda, control people and the way he wants to control them. With this thing, anybody can be dismissed at any time because they can just look at the performance and say, my man, you're not ready. So right now, every one of those deputies know very well that their performance and their, is being scrutinized every day. At least that's the message that is being sent. But the act to me, what this whole thing, yes, we're supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be all of us work here in the U.S. and other countries. There's a performance evaluation every single year. Sometimes you do it mid-year, then you do it at the end of the year. It's very normal. Why is this so painstakingly different today? This should have been done 50 years ago. Okay, so the introduction of this thing should not be new, but I think it is a good tool that if he needs to admit somebody, he just got to say, you have not been performing, so you have to leave, and he can just keep his hands free. I like the idea, but it's not something monumental. We should have been doing this thing all along. They have something called a budget review, a performance review. Have you ever seen
report?
Okay. Have you ever seen a report? That report? You haven't seen that measures how well your investments.
Jimmy, and let's welcome our Attorney Jensen as a legal man here. We have the code of conduct, right? The code of conduct, and we're talking about the tenure job. So it started with the code of conduct, what it should or should not be doing. So, but we lost that. We don't even know where those cases are anymore when it comes to people that were taken up. Now we're on something else.
Yep.
The court has done something there. It was more dealing with people who are supporting different parties while holding government,
declaring asset and all the different things.
Being politically active. But we need to measure performance. You see, anything that you can't measure, everybody know this quote, anything that you can't measure, you can't improve. The only way you will know improvement is to be able to measure it. So this thing he did, it's something that should have been there a long time ago.
No, my question is, we are not even enforcing what we already have. That's why I use the.
Then we're adding one that.
We're adding new ones. Yep. Code of conduct. We still have people who are party officials in government, and we haven't been able to separate the two.
Right.
I think we're conflating. I think with all due respect, we're conflating two different things as one here, though.
No. We're separating the two.
No, I did. I have my opinion. You have yours, but the way I see it, it doesn't seem to be one and the same.
Yeah, they are not
the same.
Yeah, I think what we were.
My question was, we're not enforcing existing laws. We are not doing, so you give the example of the code of conduct that is not being enforced. Now we have performance contract,
Yeah.
right?
What,
So we
one
pass
thing,
things on
one thing we do,
without,
Dennis. One error we perform. We like to apply a rules or restrictions that we have no intention of following. We claim that before they approve this dual citizenship, they talk about was one of the wisest decisions to make. You know very well you have Liberians all over the Senate, all over government who have citizenship elsewhere, but yet you say you have this clause that you cannot. So it's not practical. You put in a law there that you have no intention of following. We cannot be doing this. It's not practical and it's not ethical. Why put something there? So this other partisanship, this code of conduct, do we need it? Is it necessary? I don't think that's one of those things that's not needed at all. We don't want you using public resources, but at the same time, can we say that somebody is who's a official in the UP party shouldn't be a director somewhere? I think it's impractical, and we shouldn't even use it. But this performance measure, it's something good. But I want to see again. Did they say what will be the consequences if you do not meet it? Again, they're leaving that gap. They need to make it specific as to what will be the consequences when one doesn't meet these performance measures. That's what's lacking in there.
Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Eastman said it all pretty much when it comes to that. There's a lot of things this administration has started, but they've not seen it fully to the end phase when it comes to implementation. I think while it's commendable to start something like this, who's going to be in the driver's seat in terms of checking to make sure that these individuals that have signed this contract, they're being held accountable? As we know, from my standpoint as a working professional, right, in the spaces that I've worked in, when you sign those contracts, you have a mid-cycle check-in. You have an end-of-year check-in where they rate your performance, where the individual, whether it's your manager, whoever it might be, sits down with you and say, hey, this is what we agreed upon within your contract. This has not been met. We will then put you on a performance improvement plan if this is not something that can continue. So again, who will be in the driver's seat to ensure that this individual that has signed said contract within their ministry or agency is going to be held accountable? Because with the code of conduct, we saw nobody was held accountable for the individuals that are holding party positions and still operating in government seats. And then you see with as far as declaring assets, individuals have been told declare your assets. We'll give you a grace period to declare it. And that grace period is going to expire. What's going to happen next? Nobody knows. So there's a lot of thought that's put behind doing some of these things, but the follow through is weak.
Thank you. Jackie Sire said those things will be accomplished if competent people were the ones appointed to do the work. If incompetence and cronyism rule the day, nothing will be accomplished no matter how many contracts people sign. Let me welcome also again Anthony James and Jensen, that's the CEO of 2A Radio. And as the legal man here, we're talking a lot of legal man. I say, James, come and help. James, we talk a lot, so I just want to get your opening comments as to whatever you want to talk about, and then we can move on.
Well, thanks to each and every one of you for the program. Dennis, we want to say thank you for the program. My opening comment would be Liberia is now beyond our expectation. When we were growing up, there was a system that before you got into government, there was a cadet program. Some of us were in high school, we started fighting hard, applying for, those kind of for fighting to get into government. And because of that, when we were in school, we were compelled to study and make a grade because we thought there was going to be a better tomorrow. we thought that you could not get to the epitome of government without having the requisite training. The war came. We have seen succeeding governments, and we have seen people, some of whom were high school dropouts, some of whom could not even decide a good high school into government positions. Now, I'm not targeting any individual, but I'm looking at the system that we have right now. If you look at the failure of the system, it's all come from the backdrop of our background as Liberians who want to serve Liberia. So that is the fundamental problem that we have right now. As it is, everybody in Liberia are lawyers. Everybody in Liberia are economists. Everybody in Liberia. Even with Joseph Boakar's government right now, the government for the day, the appointment of officials into the government, I'm not sure there was proper vetting of those individuals. It's either you were on Boakar's team or somebody know you before you were appointed into public service. I'm not sure when Boakar took office, he looked at Liberia and said, well, I need to form a government that will be holistic. There are Liberians who are outside of Liberia who are not politicians. There are professionals outside. And because I want to change the dynamic, what do you call it? How do you call it? What is their slogan?
Trajectory.
No, not trajectory.
They always say that.
They have this, what do you call it?
You want to
rescue, right? So you want to rescue only those who are on Facebook. For example, ERBC, no disrespect to the brother that is there. But if you have an AA degree person and you have people with master's degree who are Liberians, who have practiced journalism or broadcast or whatever you want to call it, and who have been working at ERBC for years, the idea that somebody is sitting on Facebook like all of us here, and I decided not to go to school, right? But because we have this technology, this software that we all are using, you want to measure me as being an educated person because I'm talking too much on Facebook. You appoint me into public office. I don't even know how to letterhead or how to start an official communication. All of those things are breakdown of the system. So today, the situation we have now is from the epsilon to the grassroots. So that's a problem for me. And I feel it's not going to stop. Liberians themselves, they're also part of the problem. People are voting not knowing what it means to go to the ballot box. And all because the same school business. If you are not educated, that decision-making process, to know that the voting after it is governance. Voting is not going to be one day, and after that, my life is going to be in the hands of some people for the next 6 years. Do they understand that before even going to vote, even if somebody gave them money or rights? I do not think so. So these are the result of all of those problems that we have today. How it's going to be resolved? We all have the challenge to now look into the country and make a decision for 2029.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to our last point here, which is the CSA. And the NEC rejects CSA intervention. Our democracy analyst here, Isaiah Joka at CSA, said there was issue at NEC, fired people. They complained to the CSA, say, hey, we are civil service and they want to intervene. And they said, no. I mean, we've all been selected constitutionally, Civil Service Commission, and now even though it's still agency, NEC. So what are you talking about? You're going to sit down and investigate. In fact, the person you are saying that brought the complaint is still employed, is not dismissed. So, Anthony Jensen, let's start with the legal part now. Is that something that can be done? That people are fired and they take their complaint to the CSA and the CSA say, hey, NEC, let's talk about this.
The National Election Commission is a constitutional creature. it was created as a result of the framework of the Constitution, they should not employ without having a guideline. I'm not sure that the employees of the NEC are civil servants.
No, they're not.
I'm not sure of that.
Yeah.
I know that the National Election Commission has hired contractors and individuals who work on short term, and there are administrators who are responsible for the day-to-day affairs of that institution. If that has changed, I've been out of the country for a period of time. I'm not aware of that. And even Joker is a friend, but I'm not sure too that he himself is understanding that civil servants in Liberia in the past were a group of people who applied and test was administered, and those persons who passed the test were hired. Now, when we're discussing the National Election Commission, those individuals who were employed, did they take civil service test? If no, then their employment and dismissal should be solely the prerogative of the institution they work for. If they were not, now, as I say again, people can take a lawsuit. You go to court. You guys were talking about ethical issues. If lawyers themselves are not being held by the ethical standard, the professional responsibility standard of lawyers, they also will sit in a courtroom and do the worst. And at the end of the day, the country will be seen as, people who are not living by principles and standards. Ethics is a major issue for major institutions. So if the Election Commission employ people, how did they get employed? If it wasn't by civil servant, Joker shouldn't be going there.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, what's going on here? Should CSA intervene?
Well, Joker's argument is there are a spending institution. That's the other angle of the CSA. Look, Attorney Jensen is right. The Election Commission is a creation of the Constitution. It's one institution that's specifically framed in the Constitution. However, it's an institution that's like an autonomous entity that receives budgetary allotment from the government, and under the CSA code, there's this term called spending institution and a spending entity. The civil service has jurisdiction to a certain degree over. Of course, we know civil servants are those who sat civil service tests and all of that. Even the very Joker, part of his reform work recently, hasn't it been to revamp that civil service testing process? I think if I'm not mistaken, they got some support and really revamp that process, and saying now, in addition to training, but they also now have a facility that's functional, that people can take that test and properly be accredited as part of the credential and other verification and auditing process. They've been doing all of that kind of cleaning house and cleaning system work. So that argument is, if we have a mandate that any spending entity, we can intervene. So, for example, the legislature, right? It's not directly under the civil service in that respect, just like the NEC is not. But because they are a spending entity, CS Joker went there and said, listen, we have to conduct head counts. We have to conduct an employee audit to civil servants who are here, who are not elected officials, because you are a spending entity. Initially, they resisted, but later on, they allow him to do his work. So I do not know the specific circumstances. I haven't followed that specific issue closely. But the argument I've heard in the past also borders on the idea of a spending entity.
Jimmy, we still... Go ahead, Anthony Jensen.
You see, I do not have the statute with me, right, that created this. In fact, civil service herself, she is a constitutional institution.
Right.
It's a civil service, it's a GSC, and it is the National Election Commission. Now, when you have an autonomous agency that has its budgetary allocation, can two autonomous agencies, one govern the other? In my view, no. Why am I saying that? The National Election Commission is governed by the legislature. And the legislature has a statutory committee that should be reviewing the standards besides that constitutional cloud, the standards that is laid down by the National Election Commission. Now, when it goes to the issue of law, two autonomous agencies, two persons of equal powers, who governs? Are you going to say, okay, I need to see your budget? I need to see how you're spending? Where's the argument coming from to say it's a spending agency for which the civil service in a general sense should be talking about employment, how to hire people. But to be talking about going to govern the expenditure aspect of another autonomous agency, another constitutional institution, I think those are some problems that they all have to look at very keenly.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. We are discussing ethics, rule of law, and politics in the wake of the legislative impasse, the performance contract sign, and the CSA versus the NEC. If you want to be part of the conversation, the number is on the screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 pound. Jimmy, we're still talking ethics.
I think Attorney Jensen hit it on the nail. Okay. I like the ambition of Joka, but I think he's overstepping his bounds. Okay. When you talk about spending, who's supposed to be talking about spending? GSA and finance, not civil service. It's not your duty. That's not what it was. It started for. You don't have the mechanism. You don't have the expertise or any other thing of that. Why are you getting involved in stuff that you don't have no jurisdiction over? If I were the Minister of Finance, I would say to him, look, hey, look, check yourself. That's not your job. Or even the GAC, the accounting people say, no, that's not your job. Stay in your lane. And when it comes to the NEC, just what you said, the NEC has to be insulated from politics because they're responsible for elections, and they have to be devoid of partisanship and all of that sort of thing. They have to take a neutral stance. They can't be subject to the whims of the civil service.
So in the case of if people are feeling illegally dismissed or if they're feeling that they've been dismissed unjustifiably, where do they go? Go to court?
Minister of Labor. You have the Minister of Labor for semi-autonomous agencies like the NEC and some of those other organizations. And if they're not okay with the Minister of Labor, they end up at the labor court.
So what Joka is doing, is it political, ethical, or legal?
No, wait. There are some things here, though. Listen, I don't think Joka or the CSA is saying we're responsible for spending and we're monitoring spending. While their actions save the government money, for instance, when you're talking about reclassification of positions or when they're talking about making sure people are qualified and well-trained, people are tested properly, civil servants, their welfare in all spending entities, CSA is responsible for that, right? So again, we don't know. I don't know how the NEC hires people and the different grades and categories of staff. That's something I can't speak to, right? But any entity that has a civil servant who has been receiving their pay and remuneration from government, or that's generating some type of revenue for government, CSA has a purview. I don't think if it's not within the act or in a part of the jurisdiction, they'll be interfering. We've seen under Joka things that he's done. Others didn't even realize that these were civil service, the CSA's type work, and he started.
Can I just come in just
when I just finish, and then you can speak, please. I'm just saying, listen, I don't speak for Joka or CSA. I haven't spoken to him recent times. If he's a former student of mine, we know we have conversation from time to time. I've seen him do, I think he is a sort of active reformist and reformer that is an outlier frankly, in our society. We don't like to see people who are really doing their job. They're pushing within the limits and the confines of their jurisdiction, doing their job to make sure that the system works. People turn against such people in our society. We just sat here and said the system is broken down. We are running the risk of going the abyss of a total annihilation, if you can put it that way. We've all discussed that in different grades. Then you see someone who the president has appointed who's digging out what is the law, what is our act, the act that created us, what is the ban rate. Okay, we're going to do this and restaurate this and make sure that the CSA actually does its work, creates, empowers the public sector, do that kind of thing. And then we come and say, look, you overstepping your bounds, and the Ministry of Finance or Labor Ministry, GSA, who else should step on you? What do we want?
I mean, are we saying also that because one embarks on radical reforms that are progressive, we should just let it happen?
No, I did not say
controls?
I didn't say that directly, nor did I imply that's why. I respect.
So,
I respect people work. I talk every day here about rule of law, right? I respect people respecting the law, staying within the bounds of jurisdiction. Look at the acts that created your institution. You ought to know what you're doing. But what I'm saying, this guy has been digging that very law that people didn't even think has certain that works in certain ways that he's working. And they're resisting it within the government. They're resisting it outside of the government. That we're sitting there resisting it.
But you can only appreciate the resistance because people want to know. First of all, is he clearly aware of what his institution, what the restrictions or limits of his role is? What are the role of other institutions that are within the same network? For example, the Ministry of Labor. The Ministry of Labor has a quasi-judicial function, just like the labor, a little lower than, yeah. And so if you're talking, for example, illegal dismissal at the National Elections Commission, why would it go directly to the civil service instead of the Ministry of Labor?
If you have civil servant, I think that's a little condescending to say, does the person really understand their role, their job?
What is wrong?
In Liberia, we have a practice where you say, okay, they appointed somebody who is incompetent. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, or we haven't seen that. We have seen it. We will probably see it again. But the joker, no, I don't think he will sit there and not say, okay, what does the act say? What is our work here? He's making others to ask that question. What is your capacity? Do you understand your job? We're working in the public service, the public sector.
I mean, we're saying the same thing. You know him. I don't know him. Dennis doesn't know him directly.
No, I know him.
No, what I'm saying you don't know him directly. I'm saying you know him, and so you're speaking based on your knowledge of him. We're saying there are other institutions that are set up for the very same thing that Joker is attempting to do. So do we sit back and say, you know what? He's been undertaking reforms. Let him do what he got to do.
No, but I still post my argument in the box, which is not. The Labor Ministry, we know its function. CSA ought to know the Labor Ministry's function. I don't think two entities that may have overlaps in certain areas, we can conflict their functions and assume that their heads or their leaders may not necessarily know their limits. I think that's where I see the condescension.
Thank you. Gibson. Hold on, I want Gibson to come in because I have to bring in callers, and then we close at the top of the hour. Gibson, let's talk about CSA and NEC.
Yeah, I think within this situation, I would say what the attorney has stated earlier makes a lot of sense. In terms of trying to not overstep the bounds, I think there's a need for, before you make an action, to try to look to see what is within your purview. And then if it's not, consult with other people, legal individuals, to make sure that you're making the right move. I think you should have done that prior to making an assertion of in that nature.
Anthony Jensen, go ahead.
Okay. What I wanted to say as regards to Mr. Salif's statement was that the civil service in the first place is supposed to recruit employees. If employee, for example, at NEC are civil servants, it means then that they were placed at that institution by the civil service. Who paid them should be civil service. So the issue of spending for which, I mean, Joga is a friend of mine, and I know he understands the way I argue my points most of the time, right? I'm not saying he's not doing well over there. But when issues come about, we should discuss it in the face of how it should be. If for any reason he has done massive recruitment of civil servants for Liberia, for the government of Liberia, so that, for example, I will send 10 civil servants at NEC, 10 at whatever entity he decides to say, okay, we're going to place people around. Like the GSC. GSC had a system where they placed auditors at institutions to do GSC work. And those individuals were on the salary or the payment of the GSC. So it shouldn't be, look, NEC has employed people, and then you go into NEC because I just pulled the civil service act, and I'm not seeing anything. I'm not going to go through. I've not gone through it, but I did not see any heading, under the table of content that say spending power, how it should be. I just want to have a glance of that, but it is not there. It's not in the table of content as it is said, spending power of the civil service.
All right.
So
please hold your thought there. Let me bring in a few colors. And then you can let's get our caller here from Mr. Kalabo Gonglo. Kalabo, you work with the Labor Ministry. Mr. Gonglo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, so here is my comment. Good show. Are you hearing me now, Dennis?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So here is my comment. Good show. But I have few comments here. Please give me at least a minute or two above the regular time. I will say this. Joker is an interesting character in public service. I think Joker is largely dishonest about some of the things he's doing.
Amen.
I get the fact that he comes from Western country and he's trying to show the power of social media. I get that. But we can Google that. We can ask Joker. CSA. There was a full-blown reform under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Under EU, they say the British government actually funded exactly what Joker is saying he's doing today. The testing center, even reverse the testing model, everything was done. In fact, this is what they were talking about, principal administrative officer for each ministry that would be below the deputy minister, and also serving these ministry entities will report to. And they were changing basically the role of presidential appointees in the activities of civil service because they wanted to make the civil service system like very professional. That reform, cabinet minister resisted because they saw it like it was taking power away from them, and the PA for the various ministry would become very powerful. But in terms of doing everything, under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the British government through EU funded everything. Some of the things, even the testing center he's talking about, I saw you cutting ribbon wall. I just laughed because these things are done. Okay? It might be possible that maybe some of the computers are stolen, and so maybe they put few computers there. But he's not writing a new document because these things are done. And you must acknowledge existing knowledge and capacity that was built within CSA itself. Okay? That's one to begin with. The second point I want to point out is, guys, the governor of Liberia has gone through so many reforms. The Public Procurement Commission, hiring is for procurement activities. And procurement has been decentralized. So when ministry makes announcement, they follow procurement procedure to hire. Okay? You don't have to go through CSA. They can supply CSA with the document for hiring a procurement function. The very Joker who's talking, I would challenge Joker. Let Joker produce Facebook posts, because he always posts on Facebook. He posted one today. Let him show for the past 11 months he's been there how many vacancy announcements he has placed in newspaper to hire people within CSA or other entities. He's not doing that because no ministry is publishing a vacancy to CSA. It's a procurement function. And procurement is decentralized. There is procurement committee at every single ministry. Okay? And to end on this point, there are two lawyers on the show. I'm not sure about William Gibson, whether he's a lawyer, but I know Dr. George Wild Williams, my good friend from the Boys Dome. He's not a lawyer. That's what I know. The Constitution said they will enact an act to create a civil service commission. Civil service agency does not have the authority envisaged under the Constitution. Let's be clear on that. The fact that the legislature has, under the 1986 Constitution, the fact that the legislature up to this point is one of the unfinished business in the Constitution. We have not created the act to have the independent civil service commission. Let's start joking and misleading the public.
Thank you.
I am on that point.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Evans Morris. Evans, you are next.
All right. Thank you, Mr. John. And hello to the panelists. Look, I want to commend Joker for the job he's doing. I think some of his reform has been, well received. But let's not act as if he's devoid of political influence. Remember when he made that decision to fire people from that thing in Monrovia City Hall for insulting the president? I'm not sure if, the executive is the pay, is the paymaster of the NEC. I think that it's through the legislature that they get their funds. And I think it was done specifically so that the executive doesn't have the influence over the NEC since they're in charge of elections. So for me, I would think that the director of the NEC will have hiring and firing powers to, for these people who are maybe underperforming or being insubordinate. I would think that the director would have that, that authority. But maybe the question is due process. And we was talking about Joker not giving those guys due process. They're supposed to give them a certain amount of letters, warnings before they can ultimately be fired. It was argued, he probably didn't do those things before he fired them. So I think clearly he's somebody who is working on behalf of the executive. So it's like the executive going there to check the NEC and to supervise the NEC, which I think is out of play because the NEC is not supposed to be underneath the umbrella of the executive or even underneath the authority of the executive. So I think he's reaching too far. And then lastly, with the issue of Thomas Fowler, I didn't follow you from the beginning, but I assume you guys touched on that situation. Look, Thomas Fowler did a political betrayal. He was treasonous, or treacherous in his decision to join the ruling party. And this
did you say he joined the ruling party? He joined Unity Party?
Not officially, but in terms of the interest, right? To join the ruling party and try to remove the speaker. This is not like the United States. We all know
11 other sedition did that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is corporate crossing, as they call it in politics. But then, in that same breath, if you are openly going against the interests of the political institution, and you don't expect them to remove you from their ranks, especially since you're a high-ranking member, it's well within their bounds to remove him. So I don't think it's a big deal. If he wants to be on the side of the ruling party, let him go. It's easy to lose somebody that has some value to the party. But ultimately, 2029 will decide whether they made the right move or not. But thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Let me bring in Mr. Flomo Livingstone. Flomo, you're alive.
Yeah, Yeah, Mr. Judd, thank you for the show. You know, I want to commend Josiah Joker, you know, for the work he's doing at the CSA. You know, when people talk, they say, oh, why are you trying to defend the government? Look, Mr. Gongola, I just called work at Ministry of Labor. I always say this. What system did he leave at the Ministry of Labor? And he come and criticize other people of not doing that job. He worked at the Ministry of Labor and no system. He left there and he came back to America when he was appointed. Zero system left at the Ministry of Labor there. And you want to come criticize Josiah Joker, who doing tremendous job at the CSA, the system he put in place that people can see. No, that is serious. And when someone doing good, praise the person. At least tell the person can be able to improve on their work. We just criticize when the poor we don't do nothing good. And that's what Mr. Gongola just called he did at the Ministry of Labor. And I challenge him. I had some family members who worked there. They work under him. And I can tell you, nothing, no good system he left there. So they just start that. Look, they come to Mr. Fanatic Kofa, the former speaker. Look, Mr. Jah, for me, I believe in the Constitution, but I don't like selective or things like what Kofa did. Look, he was a representative when they were removing Cabinet Janet. He was there. He voted to remove the man. Well, that time he didn't care about the Constitution because it didn't affect him. But now he affecting him. Now he want to talk about the Constitution, the law. I don't like that type of law. I mean, it's complete hypocrite. We shouldn't do that. What was wrong yesterday is wrong today. But you voted, you remove someone, associate judge. You voted to remove him. He didn't care about the Constitution at that time.
But do you know that the judge are representing him?
What?
Do you know that Cabinet Janet represented him?
What? That's what lawyers do. Lawyers represent lawyers. I mean, that's their job.
Thank you. No, but the removal, that was constitutional, though. They didn't violate the Constitution by impeaching him.
The cause, Mr. Jai, the cause of removing because he gave the opinion during the election, the runoff. That's why when it came to removing, and that
impeachment in the over there, you know, they're about to do. But anyway, go ahead.
No. Yeah, but my point is it should be legal. That time, you shouldn't remove an associate judge because of that opinion. So I would say the President Broker should remove the associate judge who gave their opinions on the case. No, you shouldn't do that. You can't impeach a justice for that. And I think he's being hypocrite because doing his safety on a job where he didn't criticize the government what wrong they were doing. And now they're affecting you want to talk about room 1026. Because they're removing him now when he's talking about all the rooms and stuff. He knew about those rooms. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lazar, you're very late. I'll give you 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Good evening, as a matter of fact. Dennis, I came on the show late tonight. Dennis, so I only speak to what I heard. Yeah. I just want to really commend Josiah at the CSA for doing his splendid work. I like his aggressive posture when it comes to transparency in terms of his public engagement. I feel good when people are forthcoming to the public. For example, I used to admire the public works minister. At this point, I really see that he hits for people to know what he's doing. I'm suspicious of the kind of work he's doing there. So Josiah is a contrary to that. Josiah is a great guy. He needs to work. If we can have a couple of them working like he is working, that country will be moving forward. Now, regarding Fanatic Kofa, it's just shameful and sad that someone who grew up in America and knows that how the whole parliamentary thing works in the Western world will go over there and he will lose the trust and honor of his colleagues in excess of the simple majority and still wants to stay on it. Just so shameful and sad that he will be in America and be a convicted of crime, and then he goes to Liberia, is accused of crime, and he wants to pretend to be hero of the land. That's just sad. He needs to get out of that place, Dennis. Thank you. I want to say thank you for your show, and always be here to make my comments, Dennis. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Jimmy. Thanks for calling. That takes us to our Tabata of the week. Every year, every month, every day, there's some Tabata going on in the country. Tabata is a crude-speaking word for foolishness. Anthony Jensen, any Tabata of the week?
No, I think before we go to the Tabata, I wanted to close this whole civil service thing. Nobody is after Joker. we're talking about the statute creating the Civil Service Agency. I have just pulled the Civil Service Agency Act. Permit me just for a few seconds. Duties, function, and responsibility of the agency: to recruit, examine, classify civil servants, blah, 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 civil servants; to keep an accurate and up-to-date record of civil servants; to establish with the approval of the president classification plan in accordance with the provisions of the Act based on the duties, responsibility of civil servants. There's nothing here that speaks about spending of other agencies. So the section is section 66.3, the responsibility of a civil servant agency. And for the Director General himself, his duties are also spelled out here in 66.5. Duties of the Director General of Civil Service: to supervise, to submit to the president, blah, blah, blah; to specify the duties of the officers of the agency whose functions are not stated in the Act; to discharge such other duties as the president may from time to time direct. These are the responsibilities of the Director General. It's not about Josiah. It's not about whoever that is now being called, but it is about the statute that exists. So if we're discussing issues, nobody should make it sound like somebody is going after individuals. No, I don't think that's the essence of us coming on the show.
Nobody's making it about an individual here.
Thank you. The issue of the spending entity, what he was saying was these areas are all spending entities, so he has some connection with them. It doesn't mean that
right.
It doesn't mean that he's talking about their spending. But let's go to our Tabata because we are way out of time. We should be closing at this point. So, Jimmy, your Tabata of the week.
My Tabata for this week would be that the government must be serious and must do the people's work. The entire government.
Thank you. Mr. Eastman, your Tabata of the week.
Yeah, my Tabata of the week is that the Minister of Justice comes out with his opinion of the Supreme Court decision.
Interpretation of the interpretation.
And the Senate, with a whole lot of lawyers, enclosed with the power to create and enact laws, say they are taking directive from him, from his analysis, whereas they are above his level when it comes to law. They're supposed to be able to summon him if he tries to misinterpret the Supreme Court law. I think that's just, I don't know where we're going. It didn't make no sense to me.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, your Tabata of the week.
Can I just add a small comment to that?
Hold on, please don't add comment. We got to go. You don't add comment to Tabata. It's complete Tabata.
Wait, and it's going to give me extra time because I came and you are done with that topic. But if you're talking about the justices. Okay, go ahead.
Dr. William, your Tabata of the week.
So Jimmy actually, stole the show from me. I was on the Justice Minister, actually. I think it was disingenuous. I know the counselor, he's a learned counselor. He knows better to have done and interpreted the Supreme Court's opinion in a manner and form.
So the AG advises the president. That's what he was doing. That's what someone told me.
Yeah, it's still disingenuous because it has the likelihood of further exacerbating an already ugly situation. And so on that note, I'd like to thank Senator Albert Cheer, not Albert Cheer, but Augustine Cheer from Sino, who actually spoke out against the Justice Minister's interpretation of the Supreme Court's opinion. So I'd like to give him kudos for that.
That's my history teacher at Moreover College.
Oh, yeah?
Ahmed, your Tabata of the week.
That's that so Speaker Kofa posted on his social media page that as of tomorrow, they're withdrawing all state security from me. It's like, you're crying. You're crying. I mean, that's a serious matter. I know everybody has a social media page. They announce things. But it almost sounded like, oh, look what they're doing, and I'm going to continue to keep fighting. That would even motivate me to fight. I thought that was, it was a little below the belt.
So that's Tabata. William.
Yeah, I would say the whole thing that's happening with the House, specifically, I think it was this week, the police versus members of the House fighting.
The bus tire. Oh.
Yeah, that was the biggest Tabata for me of the week.
Man Tabata is Fala asking for due process if you didn't give Kofa due process. To me, that's Tabata. Well, again, we want to thank all of you. We at this time, let me see your what, Dr. Kwanando. You have any? No, you don't. You're laughing at somebody else's Tabata. But let's close the show tonight with your closing comments, and let's go counterclockwise. Let's start with Dr. Williams. Your closing. Let's use 49 seconds each for closing.
Well, we can only hope that with the latest appeal by for clarification, the rate of information that the Supreme Court can count clearly in the interest of posterity and the rule of law. It's not about COFA, it's more about the rule of law. We've for too long have dallied in breaking the law. It's become so normalized in Liberia. We hope the Supreme Court can clearly state to the public what their findings or declaration was, so that we can move forward. The hope also is that coming out of this situation is that both houses would prescribe clear methods by which leaders can be removed from their offices. I think it's a great learning process. I think it's going to augur well for our country going forward. These hitches aren't accidents, but they're important periods in time to help us grow.
Thank you. Mr. Eastman. Thank you. Mr. Eastman, your question.
Yes. I would have given Dr. Williams that other Tabata. I have another one. The fact that the majority house is now suspending, retiring their colleagues. I have not seen anything so preposterous in my life. They are going to cause one hell of a problem. You're not even legitimate body. Then you want to suspend somebody else? What? By what authority? By what? I think the audacity of doing that is leading us directly down a collision road. Because if they take actions against those men who did not join them in their coup, if they take actions against them, there will be retaliatory actions taken against them. I think we're playing a dangerous game here, and we just almost pray. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm afraid how this is going to all the president, the years down the road. Anthony Jensen, you're closing.
Well, thank you for the show and for the subject. We think the Speaker of the House of Representatives and all other speakers should be removed by two-thirds vote. And if anyone has an issue, in the case Kofa is the Speaker, I think all the other members should compel other members to come into session and they take the action necessary. For the Minister of Justice, he also has a right to say what the law is. So the Supreme Court opinion is the Supreme Court opinion, is the final opinion. So if anyone decides to go, let us assume that the Minister of Justice says something contrary from what the Supreme Court said, that person will be acting outside of what the law, the standing provision will be from the Supreme Court. But for him advising the president, he has the right, he has the statutory right to advise the president. If he told the president what the Supreme Court opinion means, I think he has a right to say that, not to the contrary of what the Supreme Court actually meant. For the issue of civil service, we said a lot about it. This is just, if they all are listening, I think Joker should take advantage of the discussion, and he should be able to act accordingly as per what the statute says towards the civil service agency.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Job, for the opportunity. Glad to be a part of the panel tonight. I hope to see, hopefully, resolve, and with this matter being taken yet again by Fonadi Kofa to the Supreme Court when it comes to holding the Justice Minister accountable for his I guess his take on the ruling. Hopefully there will be some more resolve that will come out of it, some more clarity for everybody in this situation as to who was indeed right and who was wrong when it came to claiming victory. But I want to close by also saying that we talked a lot about ethics tonight. As we all know, ethics is something that is missing within the body politics of Liberia. A lot of individuals who are elected to leadership, they come in with a lot of promises and a lot of just pretty much wolves in sheep clothing. That's how they present themselves to the people. And then when they get in, they decide to revert to their original ways. I hope to see a change in that, and hopefully ethics will return back to what it means to be in leadership. But as always, it's great to contribute to this conversation. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Now let's go to the Executive Director of the Liberia Governance and Justice Initiative, also FOL Governance Advisor, for his closing.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. Thank you, colleagues, co-panelists here. I think it was a good, very robust discussion. I want to go to sort of a big picture of the mindset and what people are doing to the country generally. It's not about who wins, who loses. At the end of the day, it's the Liberian people that are losing here. Dennis, I think I shared a video with you, the senior brother, Mr. Edward Carter, shared with me about the Ivory Coast, their development trajectory, what they're doing, progress they're making. The headline of the video says Europe is jealous, right? They're calling Abidjan the Manhattan of Africa. And they're not joking. And this is just next door. They even mentioned Liberia in that video, how Ivory Coast is exporting electricity to Liberia, to Ghana, to Burkina Faso, and other places. I mean, we're quick to say, look, let's stop comparing countries, it's the apple and oranges. It's not. This is about vision. It's about leadership. It's about the people that they elected, including their lawmakers, to really seek the interests of the country and not themselves. What we have in Liberia is individuals who are self-serving, individuals who are there for their own interest, and they don't have the vision that one needs to have in a country like ours after all the problems we've had. So I come to participate in these kinds of discussions as, to be a part of the public square, to try to stimulate, to share ideas and learn. As a way of contributing, as a way of saying, look, listen, we all desire best for Liberia, and what we're desiring, we don't see the pathway there at the moment, the way things are going, because the legislature is a critical component in making that to happen, in making any country to take off. It's a very sad and sorry state to be in.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to thank you. Appreciate your time tonight here on Tough Talking Thursday. I want to thank our viewers for watching, and even those who will watch later. Always focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. At this time, we're going to close with a song that says, regardless of your political persuasion, we are all Liberians. Let's do our best to keep it that way. Have a good night. And
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home.